Since the beginning of time, African American women have struggled to defy odds that keep them in uncomfortable positions in our country every day. It has been ingrained in little black girls' heads that they're not good enough or have a chance to make it in mainstream America because they're either too black or too white. So I, Brittany Minifield, took it upon myself to dig deep into what acting white really means and to see how that's still possible in 2016 when we have a whole entire black president. In order to get a clear conception on how this whole acting white thing came about, we sat down with one of my favorite professors, Dr. V, who studied the Tupac papers at the Atlanta University Senate.
It's a very interesting question. This whole phenomenon of acting white or talking white is important for several reasons. One reason is that African Americans talk with a unique speech pattern. Linguistic evidence suggests that there's certain words that African Americans pronounce differently because of, some would argue, how can we put this, ties or Africanisms culturally that connect them to the continent of Africa. So for example, there's certain emphases that we place on certain words, and the cadence of our sentences is often different from what you would call mainstream, quote-unquote, American English.
In order to get a corporate opinion, I took a trip down to Athens, Georgia to sit down with my sister, Ragunda Stallworth. My sister was born in the midst of the hip-hop generation and had a pretty interesting high school and college life. She also works at the University of Georgia. And come on, guys, what's whiter than UGA?
I went to a smaller county high school, and it was more predominantly white. So you had this little bitty majority of African Americans. Whereas when you go to college, you have a pool of diversity, all different type of people that you meet, and you really get to know yourself when you go to college. I mean, your freshman year, you're still finding yourself, but you get to meet different people. I would definitely say in college, it was the best experience of my life. I was extremely popular, got to know a lot of people. Loved it. That's the only thing I would repeat. I would never repeat high school ever, but I certainly would repeat my undergraduate experience.
Sometimes a little bit later, with children coming home telling their parents, I was at school today and one of my classmates said I was sounding white. What does that mean, Mommy?
Great. Right.
Like when people were old enough to realize that there were differences. Like, I've been a snowflake my entire life, and I have not a problem with
Basically, I've been an Oreo, whatever you want to call it, since forever.
White girl, and I still stand by what I stood by then. I don't know what that means, because I don't think that there's a certain thing of acting like something.
And this is an interesting problem that I think particularly affects African American women in some very interesting ways. This whole phenomenon of acting white, as I dated it to the post-civil rights era, it really becomes pronounced during the hip-hop generation in the late 1970s, early 1980s.
10th grade, 12th grade year, I just didn't necessarily care whether I had a lot of friends in high school versus I was more concerned about making it to college. The great thing for me, though, I went to a church in the Athens community where everybody embraced me for who I was, so it kind of balanced everything out for me.
All right, and central to really understanding this is we need to talk about the idea of code switching. To put it in a historical context, there used to be a time when black people spoke a certain type of way when they were in the company of non-black people, and then they spoke a certain type of way when they were in the company of black people. But then also there was a certain type of way that black people spoke when they were at home versus how they spoke when they were out in the community. Collectively, we used to refer to that as code switching.
Code switching, the practice of alternating between two or more languages or a variety of languages. This concept of code switching became very popular after W.E.B. Du Bois's The Soul of Black Folks, where he discussed double consciousness and transferring one's dialect depending on their environment.
A lot of black women, mothers in particular, thought it was very important to teach their children standardize, quote unquote, American English, the King's or the Queen's English, so to speak, and how to maintain a certain sense of dignity in public, right? By the time we get to the hip-hop generation, as I mentioned earlier, some of those values, those politics of respectability, as we call them now, came under attack. So it's seen as selling oneself out or trying to be quote-unquote white, when in actuality it was, if you think of it in a longer context, it's really an attempt of black people to put on multiple faces and to develop how they choose to, the best face rather, of how they choose to be perceived in society at large, choosing and performing for whatever audience that they find themselves amidst.
Here's the interesting thing. Before I came here at UGA, I was more in a corporate America environment. So I definitely say there, you definitely have to, I wouldn't say put on airs, but you have to make sure that you are professional at all times. Now that I'm in public health research, not that I'm still not professional, but we, here at this particular center, we deal with a lot of poverty-stricken communities. So in talking, you know, you have to definitely meet, not necessarily people where they're at, but we're more free to be comfortable, more loose, because we also don't want to lose them in the dialect of when we're talking.
Dialect, a particular form of language that is peculiar to a specific region or social group.
White.
No, it doesn't help.
It's different.
I'm from California. I'm from the Valley. So I used to talk like this all the time, and that wasn't acceptable because I wasn't like, yo man, what's good? This, that, like,
Right.
First of all, we don't even talk like that in California, one. But for some reason, that's more acceptable to blacks there to talk like I'm from New York when I'm not, than talking like I'm from where I'm from, which is the Valley.
Right. And that's the thing that I've experienced a lot, especially moving to Georgia and seeing white people from hood or urban areas. That I remember meeting a girl, I cheered with her, pale as I don't know what, red hair, freckles, like your whole stereotypical ginger. And this girl busted out, yeah, so you know, da 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 da, and I'm like, who are you talking to? But she grew up, she was born and raised in Riverdale. So it's not what you look like, where you're from, it determines dialect, it determines slang. Like,
Currently now, I still will sometimes in a conversation use some slang, but I also know how to turn it on and off according to the environment I am in and according to what I'm doing. Everybody should be able to form a sentence. That's not a color issue, that's an intelligence issue.
Historically, it's around the time of the civil rights movement in the Black Power era that this issue begins to develop in the minds of black people, the idea of developing an authentic sense of black consciousness. But if you go back and you listen to a lot of the black performers, many of the black artists, public personalities, and so forth, black people went to great lengths to make their grammar, their English, their diction, sound almost identical to that of white America. So I mean, a lot of times I listen to these old shows, maybe with like Nat King Cole and others, and when you hear them, their voice is almost indistinguishable from a white American of that day. In the 1990s, you had this period of people who were going to work now wearing baseball caps and jeans, whereas before that was, you know, that would have been unfathomable.
So, is talking white or appealing to Eurocentric stereotypes a thing of the past? Of course not. Since Dr. V and Ragunda's generation, people became really comfortable within themselves and do not feel the need to code switch as much. But how does this whole acting white or being authentically you situation affect young black women? And by young black women, I mean millennials.
well, especially now in corporate white America, I had to become comfortable being myself. And I felt like, and I'm not gonna say everybody's experienced it, because some people are just downright like, F y'all, I'm myself. Right. But I grew up majority white and then moved into majority black, but then felt uncomfortable being in a majority black because I grew up in majority white, so I didn't know how to be majority black. So once I got to white America, it's just like, I guess corporate America, it was like, how can I be both? Like, how can I just be myself but still feel professionally appropriate and all these things? So I just got to the point where it's like, I have my job, I got my degree, like I am competent being myself because I've gotten to this point.
When I got older, when I got into high school, you know, my school started not even integrating, but I grew up in a majority of a Caucasian community, and the school started to integrate. It was different people coming in, and when they came in, they were coming from Riverdale, different places. So I'm like, okay, well, I mean, this is just how I speak. So when people did used to come up to me, oh, you sound like a white girl, and I used to just, how do I sound like a white girl? What does a white girl sound like? When do they get a dialect? What does that sound like? And people used to just be like, okay, never mind. I didn't mean that. I was just kidding. And I was like, okay, well, speak to me correctly because that doesn't make any sense.
After I was probably 18, 19 years old. So elementary school, 1 of 2 black people. Junior high school, 1 of 2 black people. High school, 1 of 5 black people. So I dealt with racism. Like, I'm part of the KKK, I'm gonna kill you. God doesn't like black people because God's white. Why are you mad that you gotta see, aren't you people used to getting grades like that? Mind you, I was an AP student. I was a moment in my life I didn't want to be black because in the 7th grade, I visited my aunt here in Georgia and her stepdaughters made me feel so horrible about who I was that I didn't want to go to an HBCU, even though my mom wanted me to go. I didn't want to, like, I just was like, nope, black people are mean. Like, that's how I felt. And it took me moving to Atlanta and seeing, like, not all people are like that because most of the black people I was around, that's what it was like.
Understand. Like, why are you not supportive of me getting an education and all of these things?
Right.
And it's like, I'm not gonna say forget what white people think, but that's kind of it. It's like it's more of let's work with each other. Like we all need to be binding together, especially as nasty as the world still is compared to what we thought it was and how we've progressed.
People what being black is.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you are black, you should be more understanding of the layers and the complexity of being black, not falling in with the stereotype itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like mainstream society of portraying the spectrum of all ethnicities, because not all white people talk like a Valley Girl, not all black people talk like they come from Riverdale, Georgia, or Compton, or the Bronx. Like we're a very big spectrum, and as soon as people comprehend that, they'll be more willing to be more authentically themselves.
The way you talk does not reflect the way you feel about your ethnic group, nor does it mean you want to be white. Being a black woman is more than just being a part of a monolithic stereotypical group. We are more than the images they portray on Orange is the New Black and Scandal. We are people, and at the end of the day, we'll talk the way we want to talk. Hey, so are we black enough now?